Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today.
My only marathon training was doing a 15 to 20 mile run once every 10 days. That's it.
That's good.
I just trained as a 10 to 15K runner, and I threw in that long run. And so one long run, I would do it easy, and one long run, I'd do it hard.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it. I mean, it was so rudimentary compared to you guys. All I did was run the marathon.
My typical hard run was on Sunday. I would do a hard 17, throwing in half dozen sub 5 minute miles in the middle.
Isn't it true?
Then I would supplement later in the afternoon. I do an 5 mile shakeout. It wasn't too far off what you were doing.
No one really knows how to train for the marathon. We're all just finessing it, don't you think?
Well, I don't know. Kipchoge might know how to train for the marathon.
We've talked about this before, Craig. Bill and Benji and I, all three of us had different approaches towards our training. Going back to what we were discussing earlier with the 153-800 speed that I had in college. Before the Prefontaine meet in '83, I just finished the second of Boston 209, and 4 weeks later I ran pre, and I was in the best shape of my life. So I went in and talked to Dillinger. I said, Bill, right now, because I've been doing some workouts with some of the speed guys in Oregon, and I was in shape to go under 4 minutes for the mile. And so Bill goes, well, what are you training for, the mile or the marathon? So I ended up running the 10K, and Pat Porter out-kicked me at the end. Jose Gomez, Rodolfo Gomez were in there, Alberto. I ran mid-28s for that race, but I got out-kicked by Porter at the finish at that 10. So I did have some track finesse, but again, my main focus was to try and be the best marathoner I could be. I went on the next week and won Sydney in 2:10.
Where was that? Sydney Marathon.
I have a little bit of leg speed.
Now
let me say this about Greg Meyer. When Greg Meyer had that tremendous 1983, he ran sub 4 mile at like the Colonial Relays in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Yep.
And my dream was to run sub 2:10 and sub 4 minutes, and Greg did it.
Yeah.
Greg ran sub 2:10. He ran sub 4.
And he set the 10-mile American record that year too.
That's true.
That was a magical, Greg is a good guy and a good runner. He trained, he moved to Boston.
I convinced him to move to Bostonia.
And train with it. And it worked. It worked. And just like Herb Lindsay wasn't doing well on his own. He was miscoached by his coach in college.
Oh, really?
And now Greg had a good coach in college.
Yes.
But Herb didn't. And I knew, you guys don't know this because you know Herb as a roadie, from the 10K on up. Herb was a Big 10 mile and 1500 champion twice.
Yeah.
Why was he down there? Because he didn't want to run against being the 5 or the 10. Huh. So he went down and he was muscled. So we're talking about physiques.
Yeah.
Bill, I consider you and Frank and maybe even Benji to be very petite. Okay. You got tiny ankle, you don't have big, tiny wrists.
Yeah.
You're very much
an ectomorph.
Yeah. You're waifish, WAIFISH. You're
but then marathoners are.
And I looked at Prefontaine, and he was not tall, but he was muscular.
Mm-hmm.
Herb Lindsay was muscular.
Oh yeah, he was a horse.
And Greg Meyer and I were more in the middle. We weren't as thin as Bill. And Ron, would you call yourself pretty petite or thin back then?
Oh, absolutely.
He was a whippet.
7-inch waistline.
All right. So you were one of those prototypical distance runners that was built like a straw. But I was in the middle between Prefontaine. I was a little bit more like Prefontaine, but not as muscle as, say, Herb Lindsay or my teammate at college, Mike Durkin, who made 2 Olympic teams in the 1500. They were very muscular. They came from a wrestling background, and oh my God, the arms and the pecs that they had was incredible.
Herb went up to run with Frank, but he became a great half marathoner. If he was racing today, when the half marathon has reached almost marathon level glory, you know what I mean? As a great standalone event.
Yeah, he was
he would be
somewhat of an anomaly in that he was a decent 10K runner, but he could keep going at that 10K pace for almost an hour.
Even going up hills.
Yeah, but he wasn't, I mean, because he was so muscular, he wasn't really a candidate for being a great marathoner. And I don't think he had what he really needed to be a great 10,000 runner. He was, he had that 1 hour.
He was a road king.
He was definitely.
He became that. See, I knew him in the Big Ten, and he became a road king after he got up with Frank at Boulder, Frank Shorter.
Yep.
And got to Boulder and started doing. Now, who did he train with in Boulder? Does anybody know?
I'm not sure.
Was Dan Mavis in there?
Mavis was here. Frank, obviously.
And Mavis had been his teammate at Michigan State.
Yeah, so they probably did. Be aware of that. That all happened before I got here, and he was gone by the time I got here, and my career was over by the time I got here.
Unbelievable.
You should have stayed back in Atlanta with that sweet tea and that salty ham and the grit.
My ex-wife got Atlanta. She got custody of Atlanta.
Well, I don't think there's anybody on this Zoom call today that hasn't been divorced. Let me ask you that. That's a good subject. With what it takes to be a world-class distance runner and to be in the top 20-25 in your event as a middle or long distance runner. How many guys, and I'm talking guys, ended up with a divorce by trying to juggle both an interpersonal relationship and the seriousness and the focus and the you almost have to be narcissistic to be a successful distance runner.
Yeah, and you got to have some other demons too. I mean, you can't be a really well-balanced personality to be as crazy about it as we were.
You have to be a little bit selfish.
Oh yeah,
a little bit.
53, all the top three, Benji,
Greg
and myself, we were all in the middle of divorces at that.
Separations and/or divorces, yeah.
Well, half the population gets divorced.
True.
So, but I do think that this sport is kind of a cruncher sport because you're constantly either training, racing, train twice a day, and that's not normal.
And you got to rest a bit too, because you really, and so I think also there are some extroverts in our sport, but in general, we're sort of introverted. We tend not to be very well balanced social animals, even though we end up making, we go to clinics, et cetera, and talking. That is what we're required to do as opposed to what we want to do.
Well, can you think how many of the top guys that were in that top group in our era in the 70s and 80s?
Well, Frank has been divorced several times.
Well, so my question is, how many are still with their original wives? I can't think of. Alberto's the only guy I can think of that's still with Molly.
True. Yeah, he's a Catholic.
Yeah, he's a devout.
Well, I guess the Mormons are probably all still with theirs.
Yeah.
Cardong is still with his original wife. Bridget is really a nice woman. God, I don't know that many that are, Dick Beardsley is not with his original.
Mike Manley, if you guys remember that name.
Yeah.
I remember Mike. I trained with him.
I don't know about I don't know anything beyond other than racing him.
Well, I just wanted to say this for our listeners out there, that when you're training at 90 to 110 or 20 miles a week, and that means that you got to work out even on twice a day, even on Christmas, even on your birthday, and even on your spouse's birthday.
Yeah.
And
you have to be a little bit selfish.
And that is hard.
Yeah, it is hard. You have a focus that people have difficulty understanding.
That is hard for the average spouse to tolerate, okay? Yeah. Now, the other thing is that, let me just say this, the emotional buildup in that 3 to 5 days before a big race against great competition, that probably has an impact on what kind of a personality we are to our spouse as well. Yeah. And then let me also mention that if we have a great race, we're probably celebrating with her. But if we have a bad race, we're probably hard to tolerate being around for a day or two. Okay.
I got around the pre-race situation, but I would just go out to whatever the race was really early and be a hermit until the race. That way I avoided, a lot of the stress and conflict that, just not only with a spouse, but with other people. I just went and hid until the time for the race.
The other thing is, Craig, Ron, and Benji, is that not every race was that significant.
Oh, no, I'd have maybe 2 or 3 a year that I really had that kind of a focus.
Whereas I think track and the few cross-country races you do are all significant.
You don't have the opportunity to have low-key races. Road racing, you have plenty of low-key races.
30 a year.
Yeah.
something like that. And you could do it. And because competition wasn't always that intense, we could back off. But still, it was hard traveling. And then we had to do promo for our shoe
Oh,
company,
yeah. Yeah.
which they don't do too much. Today's people, they
I
just
don't,
wear.
yeah, I don't see it that often. No.
Yeah, they get paid more money and they do less promotional work. What's up with that?
Well,
I
it's
guess
just
they figure
business.
that with the online, with the social media and the online stuff, that
Yes,
they're going to get their value that way
that's
more
what it
than
is.
making appearances at races, at expos, and things like that. Quite frankly, and Bill, I know you've told me to this at least once, but as we go back to these major races, it becomes more obvious every day that the expos are about the middle and back of the pack joggers
Yes,
and the fundraisers
totally fundraising.
more than they were about back when we were running in the 70s and 80s.
Totally true.
The top 100 was way faster
Oh, yeah.
than the top
Yes.
100 are now.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And the guys and gals would come to the expos looking to meet up with some of us and
Absolutely.
pick our brains.
Yes.
You know, I would sign autographs for them. And Bill, you
But-
showed me how to do this. And they would ask me questions about training or racing.
Mhm.
Because, and I could tell that they wanted to be just like Mike. Okay.
Yeah.
Be like Mike. Remember that commercial with
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Jordan?
They want to
But
know why you're successful and what it entailed, And,
And
I think I've heard recently from a shoe guy who was with a shoe company 40 years. He told me people called influencers.
yeah, that's what we have today as the influencers. And the fact that we have the social media today is probably why having the individuals at the events aren't as important, because the social media, I mean, if you're a top athlete today, you may have to actually have a social media manager, somebody who takes care of that for you.
Huh.
yes,
Yeah, it's
I
interesting.
mean, I can't think of his last name, but Daniel, the guy that got second at the steeplechase trials in Eugene a few weeks ago, he qualified for the World Championships in the race, the NAACA, the North American whatever and Caribbean, and by running 8:14.07, I think it was, and within like minutes of him doing that, Wikipedia had that in his Wikipedia page. Now I know he couldn't have done that. So somebody, that's their job, is make sure these things happen. We didn't have to worry about that. It wasn't available.
True.
What we had to worry about is making ourselves available at races, because that was the opportunity for people to pick our brains.
And there was Runner's World and running times and the
Yeah, but that was like once a month.
Yeah.
You know, and for us to be useful to a shoe company, we had to be out there regularly, weekly. And so today, there is not that much value in them being out there weekly or regularly, as long as they've got.
In social media, you can reach 500 to 500,000 to 1 million people.
Yeah,
On
every
social
every
media.
day if you want to.
We never, the most that we ever got to at a race in those expos that we helped really create back then in the 70s and 80s was probably maybe 10,000 people, 5 or 10,000 people.
And that was probably a very rare event. Normally it'd be in the hundreds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, before we leave marriage and divorce,
Yeah, let's go
I
back
just
to
realized
that.
what's that Frank Sinatra song that was on with Married with Kids or what?
Oh, yeah. I think I remember that.
We need to have that as the theme song. Anyhow,
Yeah.
of the four of us, we're all divorced.
Right.
Yeah.
But of the four of us, there's only one of us that was married to a female runner that was more famous than he was.
Yep.
Ron, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but
That's true.
usually,
Not at all.
and I had a complaint from my first wife, Sandy, that she felt when our marriage was breaking up. I can look back at that marriage to say that was a marriage that could have worked and should have worked if we had both done the right thing at the right time. But she did say that she felt like she lost her self-identity just a little bit. And that's, when you're the spouse of a famous athlete and you go to an event and you're like, oh, you're Mrs. Craig Version, or you're Mrs. Bill Rogers, or you're Mrs. Benji Durden. And our first wives all had to go through that. But Ron, you were married to Mary Decker, probably one of the most famous female runners in America for 15 to 20 years. Now, was that your first marriage or your second marriage? Second. Okay. So you had some practice. That's what I said. When people ask me about if I've been divorced before, I say practice, practice, practice. But what was it like, Ron, for you Was a shoe on the other foot? Did you sometimes feel, when did your best running happen? After your divorce or before your divorce?
After Boston, I said, I'm Ron Tabb, the runner again, not Mary Decker's husband coach, sidekick coach.
Well, flesh that out for us a little bit. Tell us what it was like to be married to what was it like to be married to one of the most well-known female athletes, period? Certainly one of the 2, 3, or 4 most well-known female runners. How did that make you feel? And were you okay with it? And did you often have to I don't know what's right.
We talked about making sacrifices. I made a lot of sacrifices in order to allow her it was primarily, as you guys know, in the 70s and 80s, it was primarily known as an 800, 1500 run.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
When we got together and we started training, I realized that she was missing out on some opportunities because I knew, based on what I was seeing training-wise, that she was capable of breaking the world record in the 3, the 5, and the 10.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
And
did you tell her that?
When we were together, then I encouraged her to move up to those longer distances.
So did you put that bug in her ear? Did you tell her?
2.5 years, I did probably 95% of her workouts with her. But that was also the 2.5 years where I, after my races, I was better known for DNF. Did not finish. And then with the 84 Olympics coming up, my focus I decided that I really wanted to focus on trying to qualify for the 84 games. And that's when I switched over in 83 and started going.
Were you still married? When did you end?
It was an exciting time because watching her do what she did was pretty amazing.
When did you guys separate?
You guys broke up in 83, didn't you?
At the end of beginning of 84, 83. Yeah. We were splitting up. We were separated. Well, not quite yet, but in 83 at Boston, we were going our own direction.
So when she ran the World Cup, the World Championships, it would have been Helsinki? Yeah. And she won the 2 races there. That would have been the 1500 and the 3000.
Yep.
Were you guys already separated at that point?
Talk about Helsinki. That was a real off event for me because we went to Helsinki. She shows up in Helsinki with her new boyfriend, and we had just been together the week before, and when we were in Stockholm for the U.S. team training. So that was a real weird occurrence. That's when I knew.
And was that already Richard?
Yes, it was.
They were together at Los Angeles. He's the one that picked her up off the track and carried her off the track.
I thought it was later, but.
That's like 84. Yeah, but no, we had been together at the U.S. training, where we had our team training camp. Before we moved over to Helsinki. So, yeah, that was pretty weird. It's a very uncomfortable situation. We're both in the team picture together. And somehow, Benji, I don't know how you missed the team photo.
I wasn't there yet. I got in as the women's marathon was finishing.
Oh, you're...
And Greta won that. Is that right, Benji?
Yeah.
So Greta, Joan won the first Olympic women's marathon, but Greta won the first world championship women's marathon.
And Marianne Dickerson got a medal.
She was either second or third.
I think she was second. She was second.
Yeah.
Yes. And she's from Illinois.
Which was surprising because Julie Brown was training with Alberto and I thought that Julie had a good shot at winning a medal in Helsinki.
Every one of those world championships and even Olympic trials, there's always one surprise.
Oh yeah. Sure. And the thing is about the marathon, there's so many chances for something to go off. I mean, it's such a long race. I mean, I got knocked down at 25K, and that was the end of the race for me. I got up and finished, but the pack took off at that point, and I never got back into the pack. And I ran solo from that point on.
Well, the surprise in 1980 Olympic trials was Kyle Hefner. Is that right?
Well, I was a little bit of a surprise too. I was seated as 13th, but Kyle was a big surprise. Hardly any of us knew anything about him, but we both had 3-minute PRs that day.
And was Fitzinger the surprise of the 84 team?
No. I mean, yes and no. I mean, we knew Fitz was already a good runner. He'd already beaten me in a marathon, and I knew he was a really good marathoner. So no, maybe to the outside world he was a surprise, but to those of us that knew what was going on in the running world, he wasn't a surprise.
Well, I think Fitzinger and Kyle Hefner are both exercise physiologists.
Yes, they are.
Just like Di Costella.
Yeah.
Hefner Hefner trained down at the Cooper Clinic. I mean, he worked. He not trained. He worked at the Cooper Clinic.
Yeah, yeah.
Dr. Cooper.
Super nice guy.
Yep.
Super nice guy.
Who also lost his wife in the last year or so.
Oh,
he did.
Yeah, she had a cardiac system disease, and I can't remember the exact nature of it, but she'd been struggling for many years.
I didn't know that, and because I think he was married to the same woman he
Oh
started
yeah,
with.
Mary and him were together forever, and I saw them. Was it 19? I think when I saw them last, and she was not doing well. I think in the last, it might have been the last 2 years. I can't remember exactly, but the disease finally caught her.
Well, my wife Karen died in just 13 months.
Yeah.
And of course, there's some cancer people that die sooner. But I had, when I found out that she had ovarian cancer, I thought we'd have at least 2 or 3, maybe 4 years, since she was in such good shape going into it. But ovarian cancer is just one of those cancers that's just so aggressive.
Yeah.
And something like cardiac can take a lot longer to develop.
Yeah.
But just the cancer that's out there today. And when, my dad had prostate cancer, so I'm always going to be a higher risk for prostate cancer. And Bill, you've had prostate cancer.
Yes.
Benji, have you had prostate cancer?
Yep. I'm the earliest in this group. I had prostate cancer in 2003.
And you've had lung cancer, and you've had
colon cancer, and
Benji,
melanoma, and a couple of other basal cell.
Benji.
Yeah.
Benji, how the hell are you still alive?
I don't know. Well, actually,
I mean,
the prostate cancer, that was in 2003, and I had already kind of given up on being a runner. Really, I'd run maybe 10, 15 miles a week. And the prostate cancer scared me, and Amy and I began to focus more on running. So we both started running a lot more, and I lost 20 pounds. And that got me healthier. And then colon cancer popped up in 16. Actually, I'd had it for a while, but it kind of became aware that it was colon cancer in 16. And because of that, I went through chemo and they took care of it. I've been getting scans on a regular basis. Because I was getting scans on a regular basis, like every 6 months, they detected a lung cancer. And so I survived one round of lung cancer, have had my lower left lobe taken out, and I kept being scanned. And so they found the second lung cancer. And so, I get treatment faster than a lot of people because they're watching me more carefully. And so that's part of why I'm still alive. But I've also had to go through, Bill and I both have had to go through radiation as well as a prostatectomy because our prostatectomy didn't get rid of it all. But my Bill was a lot sooner. Mine was 18 years later that I had to have a radiation treatment. And I'm going through chemo now, and I'll probably be going through chemo until I die. But if it maintains, the tumor at a small level, that's great. And
Karen found that the normal traditional chemotherapy was just very toxic.
Yeah, and every chemo is different, and everybody's response to chemo is different. And you can't with a blanket say this is what's going to happen. This is how everybody's going to respond because they don't know. The fact that I'm an active person, I get in 70 miles of running and walking combined a week. That's different than almost anybody else that's going to be going through chemo. And so, maybe that's the reason I don't have too much in the way of side effects.
Ron, are you out there, and have you survived cancer or any other scary disease?
Knock on wood, I've been lucky with my health. I haven't had any issues yet.
Well, see, most people that saw me as a runner or knew me as a runner didn't understand that I was born with congenital urological.
I knew that.
And I had reflux, which meant that my plumbing is like having a septic tank that backs up into the house. My bladder working at the end of my ureters, and I had urine back flushing from my bladder back into my kidney and poisoning my kidney. And it was discovered at the age of 5 when I was in kindergarten, and they thought that I had appendicitis, and I didn't. I was on the table to have my appendix out, and finally one doctor did a couple more tests and said, this isn't appendicitis. We need to test him more. And they didn't take my appendix out needlessly. I still have it, but I had to have my bladder and my ureter, which is the plumbing, the tubes that go from your knee down to your bladder. I had to have them reimplanted. And that surgery back then in 1960 failed within 18 months. And I was back where I had a megaloureter and I was refluxing. And this doctor gave up on me. And my parents were told that I wouldn't live to be a teenager. And so my my parents shot me around, and I'm near St. Louis, and we have two excellent children's hospitals in St. Louis. One of them is called Cardinal Glennon, which is the St. Louis University Hospital, Children's Hospital. And they had one urologist who had one patient like me. And he kept me alive from the age of 6 to 13, but I'd have to go in for painful testings every 6 months to a year. And I'd also have to learn, they taught me to monitor my body because I was always going to have an infection. It was just about whether it was at a low ebb or at a burning, at a like a forest fire. Okay. And I had to learn to read the symptoms of my own body. I had to take an antibiotic every day or I was going to die. And then I had to tell my parents if I felt any of these symptoms that they taught me at the age of 6, boom, 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 3 of them. And if I did, then they had to take me to the hospital to get IV antibiotics. So I'd have to go in the hospital for 3 days at a time to get IV antibiotics. So that's really where I learned to read my body. And so the two things that my medical history did for me is, number one, it taught me at a very young age, younger than normal, to learn to listen to my body. And then when I was going through this painful testing, and that testing always involved a catheter, okay, those are not pleasant, and they were always too big for me, which made them more painful.
Yeah.
And I learned to disassociate from pain. I learned to be on that hospital table and take my mind somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so can you understand how listening to my body made me a better runner, or at least a coach?
Absolutely.
And then knowing how to disassociate from my body when I was in most pain helped me in the last third of the race when we all know that we're all hurting. Okay.
Yeah.
But then the last component was growing up on a farm and having to work hard and be uncomfortable out working on the farm in the heat or the cold, and just learning how to perform through discomfort because the job depended on it. I think that was the final component of what made me a better distance runner than a lot of other people.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I want to mention is God gave me a body. I gotta thank God because He gave me a scrawny ass body. It was good for baseball, but it wasn't good for hockey or football or basketball. But it was good for baseball and it was good for running. In fact, my first running trophy was for stealing bases in grade school. But what I'm saying is that sometimes I think about Glenn Cunningham when he got burned in that schoolhouse fire. And he had all that pain and that scar tissue on his legs and what he had to go through. And I never met the man, but I always wanted to ask whether or not that terrible childhood experience made him a tougher, better distance runner. And then who was the female that did wear leg braces like Forrest Gump? And she was
Anna Dane.
No. Anna Dane did? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was clubfoot early on, and they things had changed, and she went through struggles like that. And
Wilma Rudolph was who I'm
you're thinking Wilma Rudolph.
She did wear leg braces just like Forrest Gump.
Yep.
And later she was the Jackie Joyner Kersee of her era.
Yeah.
And was it 2 Olympics or was it 1 Olympic?
100 meter, I think.
Was it 1 Olympics or 2 Olympics? I think it was 2.
I think it was 2. Yeah.
And she had probably lasted longer if there'd been professional running back then.
Oh yeah.
I want to ask you, Benji, did you have anything growing up, a disease or challenges that
I had the challenge of that I never lived in a same location for very long, so I became self-involved. And I was active, but I was active almost solo. I mean, I had a few friends, but not many, because being an Air Force brat, you didn't live in a place for very long. I think that made me better.
I grew up near Scott Air Force Base, so I know we'd see kids for 2 years, and then they'd be gone.
And so I never got into the activities a lot of my peers did, where I just did things on my own, and I'd go out and run and chase through the woods on my own, just having fun. Also, though, it's weird. I had pneumonia 2 or 3 times as a 4 and 5-year-old, so you'd think my lungs would have been damaged, but I had ended up with some of the best lungs they ever measured at the training center down in Colorado Springs. I was built to be a distance runner. I mean, it's just, I didn't know that, but it eventually became obvious. It was unobvious to me that, even through college, that I was really going to be a distance runner. I thought I was going to be a middle distance runner, even though I didn't really have the coaching. I had the talent. I was a 49 quarter, but I didn't have the coaching. I should have been a sub 4-minute miler too, but I was self-coached in high school and badly coached in college.
Bill, did you have any lifetime experiences growing up that helped to become a better distance runner?
Well, I had my appendix out when I was in fourth grade, and that was a scary thing because in those days they used ether. I didn't
Oh
really
yeah.
have that experience. I was trying to jump off the table, and I was kind of I had very poor eyesight. So I remember running in the New England cross countries, and one of the lenses of my glasses fell out. And it was. But other than I actually had a very good like childhood or youth because I think back in the 50s and 60s, I think life was very, I don't know how to describe it, but very pleasant.
Simpler. It was simpler.
Yeah, exactly. And so we didn't, yes, maybe we had different physical things, but I had a newspaper route. We shoveled snow to earn some money and everything. And so that fits right in. I'm from Newington, Connecticut, and not a giant town, but it was even smaller when I moved there. So I always think of Tommy Leonard, who told me about the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And we've
Yes.
actually had pretty darn good lives. We really
Yeah, we can't complain about the lives we've had. I mean, we've been able to do things that we enjoyed and actually loved,
Yeah.
and we're rewarded for that and praised for that.
And go to the World Championships or Olympics or something. Most
I
people.
always tell people it's good work if you can get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ron, let me ask you this. You're the only one that hasn't answered this question. Did you have any childhood trauma or experience that helped shape you into the successful distance runner that you became?
Not really. I'm from a very, very small town, less than 5,000 people. I was more or less introverted. I had an inferiority complex because of my size. I wanted to try and play football. We didn't have cross country. And like I said earlier, I got a late start running. And it was just by accident that I got involved in running. But nothing traumatic. Pretty normal childhood growing up.
So none of you grew up on a farm, is that right?
Well, actually, I was about to say both my grandparents had farms, and my Washington State grandparents. When I'd go visit there, I had to work hard, and you had to be an endurance athlete to do what you had to do for them. And then my South Georgia grandparents, so opposite ends of the country, my visit there, I'd have to go out and gather eggs and as well as when I was living down there in high school, so baling hay, pitching hay up on the trailers. That was what we did all summer, it seemed like. And so I did a lot of heavy farm work. I was used to it, and I was also used to not opening my mouth to complain about it because you get this, in trouble if you complained and praised if you just kept your mouth shut and worked hard. And so those, that was character developing. The other thing I think that happened for me was President's Council on Physical Fitness having the shuttle
John
run.
F. Kennedy started that.
Yep,
Yes.
John F. Kennedy's. And that shuttle run, I got in the 8th grade, I got to where I could win. No, it was the 9th grade. I won the shuttle run in my PE class every day for the entire year. And that getting that star was important. And I didn't think of it in terms of, I'm going to be a great runner. I just wanted to win that little tiny race, 600-meter race.
Yeah,
Benji and run.
Yeah, something similar to that. That was my junior year. I didn't go out for football, so I had to take a PE class. I don't know if you guys had to take PE.
Oh yeah, I had to take PE. It was required.
Our PE class, they had a half-mile cross-country course, and it was out in the middle of the cornfield. And we had it every day for 2 weeks. Every morning, I'd win that half-mile cross-country run. And a couple of guys on the track team took notice. A couple of our classmen said, "Hey, why don't you come out for track?" And we had some really good sprinters at our school. I said, "Well, I didn't know anything about track." And I said, "No, I can't keep up with these guys." And they said, "Oh, well, there are other distances that you can try running." So that was the key to me getting involved. I came out that spring, and Craig, I know this would have intimidated you, but I ran 10:39 my junior year.
In high school or in high school?
10:39 for 2 miles.
In high school.
In high school.
Wow.
We were in different leagues.
School record, by the way.
I ran 8:51 my junior year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you just got lapped? Oh, almost twice.
Oh, that's the thing.
The start of my running. The next year I dropped under 10 minutes, but that was a very humble start. We didn't have a cross country program. We didn't have a track, and
we didn't have a track either.
So how I ever got involved in running is short of being a miracle.
Well, let me just say this. I'm looking at two guys, and I'm listening to Ron, and I don't think any one of you guys were superstars in high school, were you?
No, I was very good for my community, and I actually placed, I think, in sixth, in the mile at Georgia. But we were not. Georgia was not a track state, and even in college, my best performance, I think, was like in the top 20 of the SEC cross country. I never went to the nationals, but we were not studs.
Bill, you weren't even a star in high school or college, right?
I did win the conference championships my junior year in the 2 mile and my senior year in the 2 mile. Both years it's conference record. The next year I won the district and set a district record, and I finished third at state my senior year.
So he was the
stud.
This
is in high school.
Starting to see some signs of, having success was giving me confidence that I could do more than what I was already doing.
So you went from 10:31 to how fast your senior year?
9:56.
And that got what place in state?
Third.
And that's in Texas?
That was in Missouri.